Hello and welcome back to the Krishnacore Chronicles. This is number 25, and I'm joined once again by Dr. Tony. So this is part two of a discussion that we had like about 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? And the discussion went something in the line of you discussing you being involved in the kind of splinter group with Hands of Duta and also around kind of New Vrindavan, um, which was absolutely fantastic. And you being, it was more of a kind of a satellite center for
Yeah,
Vrindavan.
the so um I think like summarized, New Vrindavan was started as like a part of the ISKCON, the Hare Krishna movement. And then at some point, because the guru went off the rails, like they uh disconnected or cut that group off from the proper Hare Krishna movement, which is ISKCON. And then it was like a full-on cult. And I don't use the term cult always in a negative connotation like a lot of people do or like the media does. um, but it was full-on criminal cult reality over there. And then after some time they started to integrate other faiths, other religions, and then it became known as like an interfaith community. And then sometime after that, it was accepted back or sort of became part of ISKCON again. So while it was in this renegade phase, um, so the guru that was in charge of, most people know that like Prabhupada was the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, and then
Yeah.
he was an older man, and at some point he right before he passed away, he appointed a bunch of um, guys to be the successors of
Yeah.
the spiritual masters of the movement. And you had a bunch of like young, mostly American dudes, some European guys, um, all of a sudden with thousands of followers and being praised as godlike leaders. So that'll probably corrupt most anybody, first of all. But there was all sorts of problems, and I actually don't really care about
Yeah. Yeah.
like all of the different like there were so many different splinter groups and different like there's a Ritvik system, and then there is the New Vrindavan, Kirtananda, uh, Bhakti Pod. Like his story, him and Hamsadutta are two of the main like characters in the like criminal enterprise of a lot of the Hare Krishna movement in the 70s and 80s. But there was more. Like even the Laguna Temple, if you ever get to California,
Okay.
south of LA, Orange County, it's absolutely gorgeous. Um, Laguna Beach is just stunning, beautiful. The temple is like right near the beach, and it's beautiful. The temple in San Diego is in Pacific Beach, also very just you can walk down to the beach. They both have a Govinda's restaurant. The temple in LA is not um, close to the beach, but there was some there's a temple in Venice Beach, California, LA, and it's like now some kind of like weird Krishna related. It's a cult like this.
Okay.
I'll have to look it up. I have to look it up. I forget what they're called, but like just full on crazy nonsense. But anyways, back when the Hare Krishna movement was a legit cult, they did all sorts of like illegal and shady activity. So I mentioned there was a documentary. Well, most people are familiar with that book called Monkey on a Stick.
That's right. We spoke about that a little bit
Right.
a few weeks back,
So,
didn't we? Yeah.
so the first there was the book, and then the last year or 2 years there was a documentary um, based on the book of the same name, Monkey on a Stick. So I think it's pretty good. My opinion, obviously not. I'm like not a film critic or whatever. I didn't love it. I thought it was important. It's great. People should see it, yes. But like I didn't think it was like produced all that well. And no offense to the guy who made it. But I just didn't love it. And it was like very limited in how many people they talked to. There was only like I think two, maybe three people that were primarily interviewed. Anyways, there's another documentary that came out recently. It's called Krishna's. What's it called? Krishna's, Guru's Karma and Murder, and that was from 2023. So I think the one I mentioned before, Monkey and a Stick, was last year, 2024. Then this one was the year prior, but I just discovered it and started watching it. It's a series on Netflix and Peacock, and it's incredible. Like it's produced really well, and they go into great detail, and they interview more people, and they also interview not just like a couple of devotees, but they interview like the children of the devotees that were involved.
Okay.
They also interview the cops from West Virginia. Like, if you ever visit New York City, or sorry, if you or anyone ever visits the United States, like, there's no reason to go to West Virginia. Like, it's deep Appalachian woods, mountainous country, and there's literally nothing there,
Okay.
um, except for small, like Appalachian, a lot of poverty. It's just fucking depressing, in my opinion. I will say this: there's a fascinating Appalachian culture history,
Mm.
um, and also a musical history that's absolutely just fascinating. It's like a combination of bluegrass music and it's like a hybrid musical culture. And it's quite interesting. And the music, I personally, I find it quite beautiful. And then the culture, like the Appalachian culture, um, it dates back to the 19th and 18th century, and it's like a hybrid culture of like French and British, Native American, African American. It's like a hybrid culture, so they
Yeah.
have like their own like language and dialect, and it's incredible. Other than that, it's in my opinion, it's pretty depressing to go through there, especially in the wintertime. And I've been there a few times in the wintertime. Like there's nothing there. Like Virginia is different in the spring and fall. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful region. But like the Hare Krishna property, I forget what it is. Maybe it's a couple thousand acres or something, and then other devotees bought property next to it. So the size of the property is quite large. But the palace, they call it the Palace of Gold. So the guru that was there, um, Keith Ham was his regular name, Bhaktipad, I think, Kirtan.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
So he was the guru that built this palace of gold in the property at the big massive temple and uh, this palace of gold, like it's a large property. There's a lake with these big swan boats, and it is impressive, no doubt. A lot of the materials were imported, um, but since then, like after you do some research, you read or whatever, you learn, oh, like it's not all it's cracked up to be. Like this dude knew that Prabhupada was gonna die and he was building a palace of gold in dedication to him. But like you own this property or you're the guru of this community. So most of it seems to be like self-serving.
Yeah.
Um, and so this dude, so this documentary goes into more detail, which I appreciated. The guy who created the documentary, I forget his name, but he did some good journalism. He wrote about countercultures in the 80s and 90s, like rave culture and punk rock. So at the same time, like hardcore punk was going on in the 90s, like rave culture was also like apparently um, a huge underground community as well. We weren't involved, but I remember
Mm.
playing shows and seeing like warehouses, kids coming out, like a rave was over.
Okay. Yeah.
As we were next door setting up a show in the afternoon, you see all these kids coming out, and it was like obviously, oh, they were just coming out of some kind of party or some kind of event. So so people have obviously have written about it. So this guy wrote about it, and I have friends that were involved in that like underground rave scene back then. But we were like deep into hardcore punk, and then and it was also very like secular, like or sectarian. Like there was different subcultures, right? Like if you were into rave, then there was hip hop, then punk rock. That's how it just was in the 80s and 90s, and then things got more integrated as you went on. Anyways, so this documentary goes into further detail, interviews like so the guy who did the murders, the guy who was murdered, they interviewed his son, a big part of this documentary, which I thought was really important. And they expose a lot of this guru, not just like putting a hit on the dude that was got murdered was just a critic. He was criticizing the guru for being a scumbag because he had like these illicit sexual relationships,
Yeah.
but on the surface was like preaching, oh, you should be celibate, or like abstinence is a big part of like a lot, not just like Vaishnava culture, but a lot of like religious cultures, right? So, but behind the scenes, he was doing things that he was preaching against. So this guy was a critic and started telling people, and then that's the guy that got murdered.
Yeah.
The guy that and the guru put the hit on the guy, and so there was also a local farmer who was friends with the devotees. And he heard some stuff, and he also revealed. I forget. He told somebody, maybe told a local cop, or one told one of the devotees. And then his house was firebombed, and he's like next door to the property there. He was like a good old boy, a country boy. Um, the Another young devotee came and then uncovered all sorts of criminal behavior and illegal stuff, illicit stuff. And so he went to the cop, the local sheriff, and the sheriff set him up. So the whole thing is twisted, man. Just an
Yeah.
absolutely sick fucking
And
story.
and this is all in Monkey on a Stick, isn't it? This is the Monkey on a
Yeah, the
Stick.
monkey on a stick.
Yeah.
But this new documentary that I just started goes into more detail and it's modern. So I think it's
Okay.
actually, I think it's better than monkey on a stick because the guy I just heard a clip interview, short brief interview of this guy who produced it or wrote it. I forget what his role is. He's done a few documentaries, actually some really cool documentaries. But this one in particular, I saw a 5-minute interview with him, and what I appreciated about him, or what I really liked, was that he understood that this was a time during the Hare Krishna movement where it was absolutely criminal and cultic. But he understood that Prabhupada was like, I don't put anybody on a pedestal like like I used to, or like devotees do, but at least he gives props to Prabhupada being an authentic
Yeah.
guru in this sort of disciplic succession. Like Hare Krishna movement is a Gaudiya Vaishnava, a traditional religion. Yeah, it goes back thousands of years. So he understood the distinction and had some nuance when he was talking to the guy, the podcast. So I appreciated that. And he was like, yes, this is a cult and this was all fucked up. But also, like Prabhupada and the tradition is distinct from all of this scandalous illegal behavior.
Yeah.
So I thought that was important to make that nuance or distinction. And then he also interviews a lot of people that haven't been interviewed before. So he brings more depth and to the story of what was going on at New Vrindavan. And it's wild because I went there when not all this stuff, because this stuff was in the 80s. I didn't go there till the late 80s, early 90s. And I didn't know most of these details. I knew it was like kind of like an offshoot group or different, but I didn't know like the details. So, anyways, this documentary called Krishna's Gurus, whatever I said, crime, murder, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Gurus, Karma, and Murder. So yeah, I highly recommend it because I think people should know, obviously. But anyway, so the getting back to what I was saying, this young devotee that went there, um,
Yeah.
uncovered more uh, stuff in Krishna language, Krishna speak. He uncovered all sorts of nefarious activity, miscreant activity, like
Hmm.
crazy shit. Um, And so he went to the local sheriff and was like, "Yo, I got all this documented and recorded all this crazy shit from the temp from the New Vrindavan." So the sheriff, gets elected in the county. So the people of the county elect him, right?
Hmm.
So who are the people in the county? Well, there's a whole bunch of Christian devotees with their own property that are part of the county that are going to elect him if he, like favors them, then they'll favor him back. This is like normal, shady, but normal behavior. So the cop took all this information from the devotee, the whistleblower. And then the sheriff went back to New Vrindavan and was like, "Yo, you got a young kid that's trying to rat you guys out. You better take care of this kid." So they set him up.
Oh,
And that's why I like this documentary Christians because they detail all this stuff like it in much greater detail than anybody else has. And so the cops set him up. Um, and so this documentary shows that kind of stuff, that kind of detail, but also interviews one of the kids, the guy who was killed, the original whistleblower. I mean, there was like some other romantic stuff, yada yada, with all this stuff, but
that's right.
ultimately,
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah,
remember that from the book. Yeah.
yeah, so like he was banging the dude's wife, and then the dude got
Yeah.
pissed. But he was a legit whistleblower, and that's why they offed him. And the guru Bhaktipad, he gave the hit. I think I told you I met Bhaktipad. I went there once. Well, I went there a bunch of times, but I met him. I did a darshan in his room, which is a typical thing in Vaishnava culture. A guru or somebody gives a talk so people just listen. Anyway, so I did that, and he asked who I was, my friends that lived there, and like I just met him, but yeah, I didn't know who he was, but I remember he had the dogs, big German shepherds, and an SUV, and obviously I knew he was a guru of some sort. Um, but then the first temple that I was hanging out at was the satellite temple in Columbus, Ohio,
Yeah.
and so that's where I first got introduced to like Prashadam and the Bhagavad Gita and Prabhupada's ideas and whatnot. So I came into the Hare Krishna ideas from even though they were associated with New Vrindavan, or like I mentioned, the first time I ever heard about it was from a teacher who I had tremendous respect for. So my introduction came from people who were associated with this alternative or splinter group in a very favorable way. And you don't know about all the criminal shit until later. So, anyways, I suggest everybody watch the documentary called Krishnas
I,
because it
I,
goes into.
I hadn't even heard of it. So yeah,
I didn't
I'm gonna
either.
go and have
I
a
didn't
look.
either. Like I know that the Monkey on a Stick one came out recently, and I thought and I'm not trying to be rude or disrespectful. I just thought it was kind of boring. And they only interview, from what I recall, I think they interview a very limited number of people. There's only like two or three people throughout the whole film. So, and I'm not trying to give a synopsis. Like, I'm overwhelmed with school, so I forget stuff, right? Um, there was another documentary on not a Krishna guru, but another modern, what we would call like hybrid Hindu, neo Hindu culture in the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
Um,
And
that
what's that?
that one
I,
is awesome.
we
And
haven't watched it yet. I can't even. What's it called again?
it's on the tip of my brain. It's called Hold on, I because it's really good and absolutely documentary on. It was in the Pacific Northwest, and it was the guy who became Osho.
Yeah.
Because people don't know this. People think like Osho is like this like poet, and no, that's a fake Rajneesh. Rajneesh in Oregon. The documentary is called Wild Wild
Well,
Country.
Wild
And that,
Country. That's it. I found it
yeah.
as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so absolutely worthwhile. And just to be clear, like I actually don't like a lot of documentaries because, like for example, food documentaries. They're 99% of them are garbage because all they're doing is somebody's producing their opinion piece, basically, right? A lot of it is not resourced or referenced well. They're not well researched. And if it is, it's people just following confirmation bias of what they already believe. So, food or nutrition documentaries are notoriously terrible. These particular documentaries, I think they're actually done really well because they're showing um, like parts of counterculture that people don't know about, right? So they're sort of uncovering the dark side, if you know, if I can be
Yeah.
silly.
Yeah.
But so
But
the Wild Wild Country is very cool, and I thought it was produced really well because it shows at the end of the day, or I don't remember the ending, but like that dude Rajneesh, like he was kicked out of the country for being a fucking criminal. And yeah, you can criticize a lot of things about the United States government, but like they were a straight up like cult, um, isolation. Like they were trying to get away, but like they did some crazy shit. And then Rajneesh, the guru,
yeah.
he got kicked out of the country. What's that term called? I forget why. What it may have been like tax evasion or something. I forget. And he went back to India, changed his identity and his name, and became like this like pseudo spiritual like poet and like and like his whole thing is now he's Osho. So a lot of like yoga people or new age type people um refer to Osho often. Like, oh, he's like as like
Yeah.
he's some kind of like famous poet. Actually, no, that was a fake identity of this guy who tried to set up a cult. And I can't say for sure if they had initially had good intention and that got corrupted. I don't know. But that's a good documentary to watch, Wild Wild Country. And it shows like his the lady that ran the group, she was like a hardcore, like she took over and like she did hardcore like criminal stuff. Like it's a good stuff because a lot of people like they see like all anything India related or Eastern related. Oh, if they do like martial arts or if they do yoga, like they
Mm.
see it all. It's actually kind of a racist concept because you see all these people as pure,
That's right. Yeah.
and also it's sort of like um, paints a whole picture that erases nuance. Like there are Indians or Asian Chinese who don't participate in traditional Chinese medicine. There's Chinese scientists. There are Indian scientists. There are Indian scholars and experts, and even Indian religious leaders who don't fit this mold that yoga people have. I mean, you understand I'm a critic of modern yoga culture. So, um, but they paint everyone as like, oh, they're all mystical. And that's like in sort of an Orientalist, racist trope. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but anyway, so Osho is who that guru was. Rajneesh changed his name, and now he pretends to be like this, like super mystical, spiritual. But like, no, actually, he was just like running from the law. Like, and that's really common. Like, even like the Mormons in the United States, like the Mormons, the guy who created the Mormon religion was a fucking criminal who, same thing, like he was running from the law.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
right.
like, so, people don't want to talk about this. And there's a lot of good criticisms of almost, in my opinion, of almost every religious leader, including Prabhupada. Like, he grew up in under the British Raj, and so you can hear a lot of that sort of that like colonial education in a lot of his commentary. So I think he's absolutely no question he was a scholar, um, but putting him or anyone on this sort of like transcendental platform or a religious or spiritual pedestal, like I don't do that. I don't. I think that's not a good idea. But he had some good. There are important criticisms. He was grossly racist commentary, and it's not just his ideas
Okay.
were also sexist or misogynistic, but like the whole Hare Krishna movement. This is what 108 tried to do. Vic,
Yeah.
bless his soul, he sincerely tried to reform ISKCON, the Hare Krishna movement, mostly uh, in regards to the misogyny, like men and women. And this is traditional Hinduism and probably most religions. The women are on this side, men on this
Yeah.
side, and they're not allowed to mingle. And that's sort of like puritanical, um, like there's all kinds of ideas like that are kind of fucked up. But anyway, so Vic made a sincere effort to reform. So he produced like pamphlets and flyers and stuff like that and gave talks. And a lot of ISKCON didn't like him. So when we would show up, like they kind of like didn't like us. They like Shelter. It's like, Raghunath and Shelter would pop and kind of fun. Um, but Vic was like hardcore, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So and I'm sure he already has a lot to say about that. From what I recall, he does talk about it in his book and in some of
He
his interviews.
does. Yeah.
But yeah, so there are some good critics. Like Prabhupada was just extremely racist and misogynistic commentary across the board, and then you see some of that manifest in the Hare Krishna movement, not just with the separation of men and women in the temple, but also like with at New Vrindavan, the dudes who were like the bullies or the henchmen for the guru. Like the one dude like married a whole bunch of women and would beat his wives, and he was one of the
Mm.
like main influencers of this New Vrindavan cult. Like he was like one of the henchmen for Bhaktipat. So um anyway, so that's why I like this documentary, Krishnas, because they interview some of these people, including the women, the former wives of that dude. I forget his name, but he
Yeah, I
was just
do. Yeah.
just like not good people. It doesn't matter what religion you participate in.
Mm.
You're just a bad person. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? This guy. Anyway, so they get into those details and they get into like the sheriff selling out the whistleblower in to he was trying to gain favor with the Hare Krishna temple because they donated or elected whatever. And that's actually a common theme, even in like corporate culture. Like whistleblowers get punished across the board, and there's good data on this stuff. So you need to be careful if you're trying to expose criminal or dishonest or unfair or illicit, like some kind of bad behavior in an organization or group, any kind of group, but especially in corporate
Mm.
America. Whistleblowers get punished. Sometimes, they they get arrested. They have their careers ruined, or even look at like what happens in Russia. Dudes get like thrown out windows and shit
Yeah, I
all the
know.
time.
I know.
You know.
So, you've spoken about that documentary just before we came on air proper. You also mentioned the cost of silence,
So
which
yeah,
is
okay.
actually another documentary that I hadn't heard of, and which, from what I can gather, is going to be a really difficult watch. Can you speak a little
Yes,
bit
yeah,
about that?
yeah. I would like to. Give me 1 second because somebody just rang my doorbell. Hold on 1 second.
I'm gonna pause. Okay, so we're back. Um, So this is the cost of silence that we were talking about beforehand.
Yeah, so um, at some point, so with all of these scandals that was going on back then,
Mm.
so what the Berkeley Temple was Hamsadura, that was
Yeah,
weapons and drugs. And I had a couple friends that were around back in the day, and they told me that they also had a underground prostitution ring. A lot of these documentaries will tell you, some of the women will tell you that when they used to go out and do the pick. The pick is slang for like 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 uh, charity work to raise funds for the movement, and it was all
yeah,
bullshit. So they would go out, devotees would go out. This is not way back. This is in the 80s and 90s. The devotees would go out and do what's called book distribution.
yeah.
So you go out and you sell books, or you give away a book and ask for a donation. That in of itself is like the basic concept of charity, religious charity. I don't have a problem with that, but the devotees went way too far. Other religions did obviously similar type things. So they would go to big events and pretend to be a different organization. Like, hey, um, hi, we're giving away these books for feeding the children charity. Um, so they would give the person a book, and then after they look at all these beautiful pictures, the Bhagavad Gita, yada yada. Excuse me.
Mm.
And they would be like, "Oh, give me a donation." So it was a bait and switch. First of all, a lot of it, like an insincere. Hey, I have something, a gift for you. Here, check this out. Take a
That's
look. This
right.
is for you. And then as soon as a person, they start immediately with a hard sell, and a sales tactic, and also very manipulative, like dishonest manipulation. It could be either just like manipulative or even just straight coercive, aggressive coercion. So that was a big part of the book distribution program. Um, but devotees were doing this all across the country
Yeah,
and bringing in millions of dollars, like just obscene amounts of money. So a lot of devotees would like sell stickers or hats, as well as give away books, right?
yeah,
Um, the sort of the popular image of Hare Krishnas from the 70s and 80s is that they were at airports. They were, dressed as
yeah,
brahmacharis. So that was true. Um, but they also did this what they called the pick, and the term pick comes from pickpocket, which comes from uh, carnivals. And so this is off topic really quick. There is a documentary on the history of the circuits or carnivals. It's a two-part series. I forget who did it, but it's brilliant. And I'm a big like history buff, so I love it, and I encourage everyone to watch it because it shows like a transition in time when we were moving from like an agricultural age into the modern era and
mm,
industrialization. So it shows like a lot of the changes going through human society of that time. But they explain also part of the nefarious or illegal activity, like carny tricks and what charlatans do, medicine shows. A lot of the stuff is relevant
yeah,
for
yeah,
understanding not just like health and wellness culture, but spiritual cultures as well. And like shady gurus. Um, and a lot of the times when people talk about cults or gurus and stuff, they talk about recruitment. They talk about how vulnerable people that come from broken homes and this and that. But they rarely talk about how fucking deceptive and manipulative these people are, the gurus are, and their henchmen. And I think that's more important to understand. Instead of labeling people stupid or gullible, I think it's more important to understand the manipulative process that goes
Yeah,
on.
sure. Yeah.
So that history, two-part series on the history of circus or carnival goes through like P.T. Barnum and goes through the different changes in time, but shows some of these tricks that they use. They would go through and pickpocket. So they would have somebody like making a scene, creating commotion, and that draws a crowd, or selling tickets, and then somebody would go through and just like the pick,
Yeah.
pick
Yeah,
the
sure.
pockets. So this was a global activity, but especially because Americans are unique. So American devotees were doing it all over the country, and then they would have the women go out, sometimes be flirty, under the guise of, oh, here's a charity, we'll do book sales, yada yada. Millions of dollars they were bringing in the Krishna movement. So um, even John Joseph
Yeah.
mentions some of this stuff in, I think his book is The Evolution of a Cro-Mag. I think that's where he mentions this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Dressed as Santa Claus.
a disabled Santa Claus,
A disabled Santa Claus. Yeah. Yeah. In a
like
wheelchair. Yeah.
just crazy shit. And that was common. That wasn't like a fringe
No.
activity. That was like mainstream Christian activity. Anyways, so New Vrindavan, Anna Berkeley, uh, devotees did this a lot, as well as like underground, like weapons trafficking and a lot of drug trafficking, like enormous amounts of like illegal, not just like national, but international drug trafficking that the Hare Krishna movement, people don't even notice much about it. Um, Crazy shit and murders. And like, even like Monkey on a Stick, I don't think goes into all the details. There's like other, I heard stories that like isn't even covered in that original Monkey on a Stick. So, anyways, um, getting back to the point, the the Hare Krishna movement had set up under the instruction of Prabhupada, set up boarding schools
Yeah.
for the children, for the boys, because women have no value other than being, you grow up to serve your husband and be a cook or some bullshit.
Okay.
Um, so the boys were instructed to be sent to boarding schools. So the main boarding schools were in Vrindavan, India, at the Krishna Balaram Mandir, and then in New Vrindavan. These were the biggest, I think. There was a couple others, but these were the biggest, the largest number of students, I believe. So 70s, 80s, and 90s. But in the 70s and 80s, when they were sending, like, thousands of children went to these gurukuls. And it's kind of a thing like in Indian culture. Like, I think most traditional religious cultures have like boarding school religious instruction or indoctrination. So the schools where these young boys were sent to, there was a lot of physical violence, a lot of
Yeah.
emotional abuse, labor abuse. They had children, 6-year-old children, fucking working for, like, out in the fields and shit, and a lot of sexual violence as well. So this went on for decades, 2 decades, right? Um, on top of all the other stuff that I was mentioning, the Guru Coolies were systematically abusing these children, large numbers. And at some point, I think in the early 90s, this is the time when Shelter and 108 and like Krishnacore was like being born or whatever, or becoming popular, I should say.
Yeah.
Um, Remember, we didn't really have the internet back then, right? So information didn't travel as fast. Um, and there was a girl from my age, or a little around my age, from New Vrindavan. I had a crush on her. Um, and so we were just friends. She's really pretty, and I had a crush. This was before I was living in the temple. Because once you live in the temple, you're supposed to be celibate, and that's a whole nother conversation. But
Yeah.
um, So I knew some of these kids, and then like when you go to temples, like we were young, and you would hang out with young people when you're hanging out at the temple, but you didn't hear any of these stories. I already heard stories from New Vrindavan and from Berkeley, including like these underground um, prostitution ring, and then some of the rumors about Kirtananda or Bhaktipad in New Vrindavan was that he was not only having like illicit sexual relationships with local townspeople or local like workers, laborers that were building the thing, but also like um, he was also sexually assaulting children.
Yeah.
So I only heard rumors of this stuff. And also, like when you hear rumors, like they were like, "Oh, he was having gay sex with," like there's definitely some homophobia there. I was like, well, it doesn't matter if it's gay sex or heterosexual. Like it's illicit according to their own rules, and he's being deceptive. But then at some point, we heard about a lawsuit that was the children from the Gurukul movement got together and like hundreds of them. I forget the number, like 200 or 400 children that went to the Gurukuls.
Yeah.
Like they got together to file a class action lawsuit against the leaders of the Gurukul system. And I believe it was mostly Vrindavan, India, Dallas, and New Vrindavan. I could be incorrect on
Okay.
some of those, but I think those were the primary ones. Like Dallas, New Vrindavan, and Vrindavan. I could look at anyone could look up the details. Anyways, these children, some of them had their lives destroyed. Like if you know anything about like childhood, like childhood abuse, like my personal opinion, I don't like use the term evil. I don't, unless very clearly and specifically there's someone with power that is exploiting a vulnerable or causing harm to a vulnerable people or person, especially, let's, for example, children. Um, and I don't use that term um,
Lightly.
often.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't use it lightly. So when I started to hear some of these stories, I was like, so this, I was like disturbed, but it also like was a catalyst. I started becoming skeptical, not just of the Hare Krishna movement in general, but of some of the broader metaphysical concepts of the spiritual philosophy, like karma, um, and also functional issues like hierarchies um,
Yeah. Sure.
in these, not just in the organizations, but within the ideology itself. Um, disciplic relationships, the power, the differential in these relationships. Now, to be clear, I had an overwhelmingly positive experience with religion. But then I started hearing these stories and I was like, what the fuck is going on, man? I heard these stories of the children that got together to file a class action lawsuit, and it was based in LA. LA is a massive community, big temple, big community. um, so I think, like I said, I think two or four hundred, several hundred children got together and sued the Hare Krishna movement for millions of dollars. So once you go through the process and you get to discovery, all the details come out, who was involved, who was responsible, who did what. I heard about these stories from other people, but nobody in Shelter 008, from what I can gather, talked about it. Never
Yeah.
said a word. Um, and then I learned that the guru, the headmaster of the Gurukul in Vrindavan was Raghunath's guru. Danadar Swami, he was in charge of the whole operation
That's
for
right.
years
Yeah. Yeah.
in Vrindavan, and that was where one of the bigger schools of these allegations of abuse took place. So I went through as much material as I could find online, talked to some of the kids, and this is all before this documentary came out. Um, so all of these like charges of like sexual assault and physical assault came out from this lawsuit. And if it doesn't disturb you, you're a fucking sociopath, number one. But if you make excuses, which I heard several devotees have made, this is what initially was, like I said, a catalyst. This is what got me to start questioning or becoming skeptical of some of these big concepts, but certainly distancing myself from the Hare Krishna movement entirely. Because some devotees would say horrible things like, "Oh, well, the karma, this and that," and karma is just, I personally, I do not accept it. I think it's a victim blaming system. It deflects from accountability. It ignores a lot of serious, real world issues. But I heard some people like, "Oh, well, it's their karma," or yada yada, and that just like I found that disgusting. So for decades, there was systemic childhood abuse. Some of these kids had their lives ruined.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know at least one child took their own life after years of addiction. And if you know anything about addiction or substance abuse, you know a lot of it is rooted in childhood abuse. This is like well known. So, anyways, when this thing came out and I started hearing about it, this changed my life because I questioned the idea of, is there a God? You learn these stories like Nrsingadev protecting his devotee, but these children weren't protected.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here. And then all these devotees didn't do anything or didn't say anything. And like that's common in these abusive type dynamics, right? Even like with family dynamics, these abusive relationships. People don't speak out for various reasons. Anyways, so once that lawsuit went through, it basically bankrupted the Hare Krishna movement. And that's one of the main reasons, not the only, but one of the main reasons why you don't see them doing Sankirtan or book distribution. They're not out in public places anymore because it ruined their reputation appropriately. But then I heard like, okay, so Raghunath's guru was in charge of the whole school. I looked at the material. I didn't find any allegations of sexual abuse of the children, but lots of physical abuse. And then the sexual abuse were from his, whatever the term is, the teachers or professors that were under him.
Yeah.
So you don't run a school and like not hear about this kind of stuff because like this is how like these kinds of things function. That changed my life. I distanced myself from the Hare Krishna movement. I questioned a lot of the concepts, not just like Vaishnava or Hindu related concepts of religiosity or theology, but all related concepts. And then finally, this documentary came out. I think it came out a long time after the lawsuit, because the lawsuit was in the 90s. So this documentary, let me see.
Did you say it was 2016?
I believe so. The Cost of Silence. I have to look it up, but I briefly looked, and I think it came out in 2016.
I've
that doesn't
got
make
it.
no, that actually doesn't make sense. Go on. What were you going to say? Because that doesn't make sense. I think it had to have come out earlier.
I've got here the Cost of Silence, Children of the Hare Krishnas, Child Abuse in 2016. That's the title on the ISKCON Gurukula School's website, or the Krishna Tube website. So, but it's funny, it says in 2016. So I'm not too sure.
There's another documentary of the same name. Hold on. Krishna Kids. Okay, so this one, yeah, so there's a couple of same names, but the Constant Silence, Children of the Hare Krishnas. Um, I mean, maybe it did come out in 2016, but it seems like it was uploaded. So this was similar to like when I learned about the Catholic Church scandals. They abused children and then covered it up. And like, you know, ISKCON made this like effort to have like a governing body to look into yada yada. I mean, look, my opinion, too little, too
Yeah.
late. At least they did something, I guess, but like it's too late, dude. Cost of Silence. We filmed in Sundance 2020. No, damn it. This is the different one.
Was
I
was yeah, was the lawsuit in 2016?
No, the lawsuit started in the 90s,
Ah,
and then
unfortunately,
I think it ended like it was settled like for millions of dollars. I forget the number, but I think it was settled in like 2003-ish, early 2000s. So anyways, maybe why can't I find produced in 2014, released on 2016 on Narsingha, the appearance day of Lord Nrsingadev. So okay, I mean whatever. I thought that it had come out earlier, but apparently not. But anyways, so thankfully that documentary came out, but I heard about it prior to that, and then also I noticed that no one I know, I think except for maybe one person said something. It's also possible that Vic said some stuff, but I don't recall. But I know that Vic also had a couple of run-ins with a guru he wrote about. And when I read that, he had like there was a guru that was on tour from DC. And like Vic had like just a really inappropriate experience. Like he was like, "What the fuck is this?" That's my language. Um, and that also, I was like, "Yo, that's some weird shit. Like, what? I, that's not okay." And then once I started hearing about these the Gurukuli kids being abused, I was like, done. Fuck this, and fuck this whole organization. But also, like, I don't remember anyone in shelter. I remember, like, I'm pretty sure I would imagine Vic and also Rob said some things because we've shared comments over the years. But I don't remember anybody at all. And this is why that Raghunath's guru is Damodar Swami. I had a good relationship with him. I thought he was nice. But he was not welcome in ISKCON temples for a long time. And we all were told that it was because he's a rebel.
right.
Like
Okay.
he
Yeah.
he doesn't follow the rules. He's a rebel. No, actually it was because he was in charge of a school that was systematically abusing children for fucking decades. So my opinion is fuck this guy, fuck all of these people. They're horrible people and they don't deserve mercy. You get mercy or forgiveness from your maker, but certainly not from me. If you abuse children, no, fuck that.
Yeah.
I do not tolerate or compromise on that particular issue. Something like, oh, you embezzled some money or whatever, like that's not even on the same level. Underground Weapons is kind of funny and would make a good film, but also entirely inappropriate and incongruent with the philosophy you're supposedly living by and preaching. So no, fuck you too. But then systematic abuse of children, done. I ended my
Yeah.
relationship with the Hare Krishna movement, and I found that although it's unfortunately common in these situations, most people didn't say anything about it. So that is the like hidden secret that no one wants to talk about. But I did look up the as much testimony from the trials as I could. A lot of the documents, years ago. And I will say this is that Danadar Swami was not accused of sexually assaulting children, but was absolutely accused of beating the shit out of children.
Okay.
And also, if you're in charge of a group of men who are raping kids, you all belong in fucking prison and you will burn in hell. I do not care about anyone's opinion or idea. Anyways, that documentary I suggest everybody watch because that will ruin someone's life. And anyone who tries to justify or rationalize it or whatever, no, I ain't having that shit. So a lot of the like the reputation of the Hare Krishnas in the 80s, 70s, and 80s of like doing the pick or going to airports and stuff, like, yeah, you can criticize them. And some of that is true. Some of it's also misplaced or exaggerated. Um, it is absolutely a authentic, uh, like a Hindu religion that you can say dates back to Chaitanya. The idea that like um, these people have like a disciplic succession or a particular relationship with God that makes them superior to other religions, I think that's just ridiculous and just based on narcissism, group narcissism. But it is a real authentic religion, no doubt. That's the thing that I think I said earlier.
Mm.
The guy who made this documentary called Krishnas, like I said there was a 5 or 10 minute interview, and he made that clear, and so I respected that because he brought that nuance, which a lot of people don't. Um, so that was a big turning point in my life, and there was a few in terms of my spiritual development or my understanding of metaphysics and theology and understanding God and our relationships and stuff like this. Um, so that lawsuit bankrupted the Krishnas, and people need to know this stuff. That's a big reason why they stopped preaching to people that you should move into the temple and be brahmachari. And like you can't like if someone wants to pursue, I pursued that lifestyle, a monastic lifestyle. It was my choice.
Yeah.
Like not everyone is going to feel that desire or have those interests. I certainly did, and a lot of us did. And there's probably a lot of kids that got into Krishnacore because they were influenced by like a celebrity like Raghunath or Ray Kappa or Vic or whatever. But that's going to happen anywhere in any realm. Um, but there are people that have a sincere interest in developing their spirituality or living according to some religious tradition. And I think most people don't have a problem with that. But anyway, so that documentary I highly suggest. That one girl that I knew from New Vrindavan, I didn't see her in that documentary. But I did meet a couple of the kids like out in LA because I used to go to the LA temple a lot. Um, and I only went to Dallas one time. We played a show on that big tour we did. We went to, I think we stayed at the Dallas temple a couple times maybe, and we did a show. It was a big community there. Um, and also, let me just say, if anyone is a devotee or like new or interested in stuff, you got to be careful when you go searching online. You're gonna find all kinds of crazy shit. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there, there's a guy, some devotee, who's obviously out of his fucking mind, and he writes a lot of stuff, and it's all legitimately insane conspiracy theories. So the criticism of the guru system, like that, there's legitimate criticisms, but then all these offshoots and different groups, the Ritvic system and New Vrindavan system and this system and that system. So like dudes go way too far with this stuff. Like some of these dudes like really just need to get a life. They go too deep into these rabbit holes. And there's one dude that you'll find if you search, like
Yeah.
he's like a devotee, neo-Nazi, alt-right, like sociopath. But he writes like he's on drugs and he just writes enormous amounts of material. So you got to be careful when you go searching for stuff because you will find crazy shit that might seem appealing on the surface. um, and also, like people think like the GBC or the ISKCON movement is like, oh well, that's authentic, and yeah, but they're all organizations are going to have problems. So I think that at this point there was like I don't know 10 or 15 gurus that were like either they fell from the language using the proper language from the Krishnas, they fell from their position. They didn't fall, like they made a choice to do some like really shady and in many cases like really harmful stuff. So you need to be careful. Also, like my opinion at this point is you should never put anyone on a pedestal, especially at that degree. And here's something interesting in my opinion that I think you might appreciate. I just discovered recently there's a hardcore band called Turnstile, and they're so popular. They're ridiculously popular. So I avoided them for so long. First of all, because I'm in school, I'm overwhelmed. And when I listen to music, like music in of itself can be a spiritual experience. But these guys their popularity is just makes no sense. So then at some point I was like, let me check them out. Let me read some of the comments from their fans. So they recently played a show here. And so one thing, and I talked to some of my coworkers, because the young people at my work, the Gen Z kids, I asked them, I was like, yo, what's up with Turnstile? Like I listened to some of their music. I actually like it. It sounds like Snapcase. It's like poppy, like catchy. Like I enjoyed it. And it's even got like 80s influence. Like you can hear like the Police. You can hear like it's like I think it's pretty good music, but certainly nothing unique. The lyrics are not unique. And I'm not saying that as an insult. But why are they so popular? So my opinion is that there's a lot of similarities behind this phenomenon and also other pop celebrity fandom like Beyonce or Taylor Swift or other artists that I don't really follow. So I think that at some point in the 19th century, like Max Weber wrote about the disenchantment of society.
That's right. Yeah.
So as we were transitioning to a modern society, religion was losing a lot of its appeal and also a lot of its authority in society, like traditional Christianity. A lot of these new movements, especially yoga and fitness culture of the 19th century, started like to sort of replace where traditional religions would serve in society. This is true for wellness culture. This is my wheelhouse. Like I've studied in great depth the history of wellness and fitness culture. So these cultures were relatively like emergent in the 19th century, and they became a proxy for religious experience. It gives you rituals. It gives you a sense of community and a personal spiritual identity and a connection and an ideology or narrative about how life is changing and things are different and yada, 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 right? So my opinion, and there is some literature that supports this, is that wellness and fitness culture was, at the time, a big, important proxy for religion, even eugenics, which in the early 20th century, these guys that taught or promoted eugenics explicitly wanted it to be accepted as a new religious movement. And I have all that data. I got all of the all the literature on eugenics as a genuine, to be accepted as a genuine religious movement. And fitness culture is a big part of it. So you see a lot of these elements today, but it really did start in the 19th and early 20th century. Not all of fitness, but a big part of it. So when I heard Turnstile, like there's nothing that special, but it is catchy. There's no doubt. And everyone is like, "Oh, you got to see them live to appreciate it." Well, that's not most everyone in hardcore would agree that you have to go like live shows provide an experience
Yeah. Yeah.
that you can't capture otherwise. So a lot of the young people and a lot of the commentary online are saying the same thing. They're like, "Oh, you need to see them live." Even Porcel stayed over here a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Oh, you got to see them live," because he's always like really positive and encouraged. And I was like, "Okay, fair enough." But you read the commentary online, and it sounds like vaguely spiritual, um, not explicitly religious, but you can see that it's providing the same benefits, the same giving people a sense of purpose, a sense of community, an overarching ideology, helping to explain our place in the world. There may not be specific gurus or teachers or literature, but it is providing a lot of the same things that religion would normally provide in like society over time. Um, so that was interesting because like their music is good, but like just kind of a
Yeah.
weird
Yeah.
phenomenon
Yeah.
because they're not there's nothing is that cutting edge anymore. Um, anyways, so getting back to what I was saying, one of the reasons why these new religious movements are so popular is because of disenchantment.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
disconnected, and in a lot of ways, which started during the Industrial Revolution. And this is why fitness and wellness culture was really popular in the 19th century. And also similar to what I was saying, a lot of why musicians or music culture is very important for a lot of people. Um, but also this is getting back to the devotees like or the Krishna topic. Um, one of my criticisms of spiritual cultures or religious cultures is when you have these like metaphysical or theological concepts like karma, it's very easy to distance yourself or disassociate from the material realities. Also, this concept that there's a distinction between spiritual and material. I don't think there's this distinction that is popular within the Hare Krishna movement rhetoric. For example, this the abuse of children in the Gurukulis that should have ended this fucking movement, and all of those people should be in prison.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you believe in karma, oh well, like oh they'll get theirs in the end, or well, or the children they somehow deserved it. This is like sociopathic rhetoric, in my opinion.
Mm.
It's a sort of a just world theory that oh they deserve what they have coming. Um, so these ideas are sort of what would help me transition away from the like you could say spiritual technologies or Krishna movement, um, and one thing related to what I was saying about these serving as proxies or religious, like there's a reason why people are attracted to new religious movements or religious groups or music groups in general. So the same thing with fitness and wellness culture. Um, but they also distract or deflect from the material conditions which cause harm and suffering of peoples or cultures or specifically children. So not all fitness and wellness culture um, was of that in these categories of being a proxy for religion. A lot of fitness culture in the 19th century, where they were explicitly political clubs, and they did some phenomenal work, and very important work historically. And so this is one of the big transitions in my understanding of life and of spirituality or religiosity was that when I heard about these the Gurukuli issue, like a lot of people will either just ignore it or they'll use spiritual concepts or technologies to justify or rationalize it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. it deflects from the material conditions. Why did these things happen? You had people in positions of authority that shouldn't have been there, had no qualification, no experience, but they were also abusing children. Why was there no checks and balances? Why was no one checking in? Why did nobody do these? So I found this to be more important in terms of understanding like how human societies evolve and grow and who we are in terms of the big picture. Um, so that was significant in my life, and also like no one has anything to say. Like that is fucked up. So that was just a Gurukuli experience. Um, and then what I was talking about before with like the Vrindavan or the Berkeley Temple, there's other things like even like there is a politician in America that comes from an offshoot splinter group, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, that's right.
You may have heard of her. She's like
Yeah,
a hardcore right wing dummy, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah,
Not super intellectual, but covers up the lack of intelligence by being a bully. She grew up in a Krishna splinter group as well. So there's actually a whole bunch. Like you look at all these different. First of all, Hinduism is a catch-all phrase.
yeah,
It's like
exactly.
an umbrella term. And you look at Gaudiya Vaishnava as a religious tradition, there is actually multiple groups. Within the Hare Krishna movement, that's just like one sampradaya, one like denomination. But there's different denominations. And then within them, it's so complicated, dude.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so anyway, so that is she is grew up in a splinter group that's also a religious these are religious fanatics, these people. They're not like normal like religious people. They're religious fanatics that have an explicit political agenda, that group. They're from Hawaii. Um and I forget what they're called, like the Tree of Life or something like New Vrindavan ultimately became they were accepted back into the Hare Krishna movement. So these issues are clearly in the past. I can't speak for the modern ISKCON movement, but I definitely distance myself from a lot of these people. I'm still very close with my friends. Like I just said, like Porcel was here like 2 weeks ago, stayed over. There was a what is it? The um,
Ratha Yatra.
Ratha Yatra parade in New York
Yeah,
City. Unfortunately, it was raining when he was here, so I don't think it was that festive because it was rained out. But that's like an important historical religious ceremony. Me and Raghunath went to Puri, where the main Jagannath temple is. And what's interesting is, I think it's still true. It's one of the largest temples in the world, has one of the largest kitchens in the planet. Um, they don't allow Westerners, Americans, or Europeans. I forget what the rule is, but they only allow like Indians in there because some like I don't know. But I took a selfie in the '90s, which is unique, but with the temple in the background. And that whole culture on the beach, that Puri town, that whole like west coast of Bengal, that's absolutely gorgeous. We were doing yoga on the beach in the
lovely.
morning,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and like just fascinating, absolutely fascinating stuff. So although like my understanding of like the Hare Krishna movement or religion in general changed over time, like that experience I had was life transformative. Like there's no doubt about it. And I don't have any regrets at all. And like I still have a great appreciation for like the historic or the traditional aspects. But like when those with that story of the Gurukulis like kind of fucked me up. Like that changed my
yeah,
life.
yeah.
Um
I
so
know that
and
I know that we're gonna have to wrap this up in a minute. We've gone way over time, but it's been really interesting hearing your journey, especially last week, kind of getting into the Hare Krishna movement, and in this week, you moving out of it. And what is common, what seems to me to be common with Raghunath, with Raj Kishore, with Kate Reddy, is that you all seem to have moved into ISKCON and then all moved out the other side, albeit whilst keeping those underpinning ideas around Vaishnavism. And you're still doing this stuff, but without ISKCON. And there was obviously a real issue with ISKCON there. And we've seen that. We've seen that with the monkey on the stick thing. And we've seen it with those documentaries that you've highlighted. But as an academic and me, one of the things I'm most really interested in is how you guys got into this movement. And the next step for me is exactly what you're talking about there, is why and how you moved out the other side and kind of said, look, enough is enough. I'm going to keep chanting. I'm going to keep yoga. I'm going to keep the teachings. I'm going to still read the Bhagavad Gita because it's a valuable text. It's fantastic, but I don't need ISKCON. I don't need this
Yeah,
system.
and I think there's definitely some differences. I can't speak for anyone else. I know Vic had some like also some heavy duty experiences that influenced him. So I think we all had some differences, um, but we all still, to some degree, have like an appreciation for the underlying
Yeah,
principles that don't come from ISKCON, that come from the tradition itself.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
the Gaudiya Vaishnava the tradition. Um, so, and I think that's some of these principles are universal, not explicit to Hare Krishna religiosity or Vaishnavism. A lot of them are like shared universal principles of religious movements. And I think that's important to like recognize that instead of being like an absolutist and saying, oh, now I found the light, the truth, and the way. Um, I think it's more meaningful, especially right now with so much division or divisiveness, to understand the important principles and also look historically at the benefits that religion brings to people. Yes, there's a lot of problems. I mentioned quite a few, but also like it provides a sense of community and a sense of purpose. And I think there's a lot of important values there's a lot of good literature on this. And
yeah,
so, you know, like those things are important. And we all have like a bond that lasts a lifetime. We had fantastic. I also just talked to my buddy Mark, the singer from Zero Tolerance. I told you, like they came on tour with us. He was still one of my closest friends. So, but we all have slightly different stories, even though there are some similar trajectories over time. And like I said, like Raghunath's book, like he goes through some of our stories. These are fantastic stories, and we
yeah,
had a
they are.
wonderful experience.
Yeah.
And also, like I looked up, so I mentioned when we went to Manipur and stayed with these martial artists, the temple with the martial artists, the
Oh,
women
yeah,
who do
yeah.
sword fighting, like that, like no, very few people in this lifetime will ever have an experience like that. Anyways,
That's
I
right.
looked it up. I looked up that the temple and everything. There was a terrorist attack. Like that area is fucking crazy, man. They have like Muslim and Buddhist and Hindu and Christian terrorist groups that are having like a civil war right now. It's insane. But anyways, in 2016, I believe that temple was attacked with a bomb, and shrapnel from the bomb hit the guru who was there when we were there. He was the guru in San Francisco too. So I knew him originally from San Francisco. He was a really sweet and loving person, and he was like a legitimate scholar. He had like a PhD before he became a devotee. And then he was a leader of the Krishna Library, whatever that association was called. Not the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, but he was like, yeah, the principal leader of the San Francisco temple, which was slightly more academic than other temples. That guru died from the shrapnel from that terrorist attack. He was there and he took care of us. He took us around town. So anyway, so I just want to say thanks for these conversations have inspired me to look up stuff. I have old pictures too. I went through, I organized some stuff. But I like looked up some of the places. I found out like some of these cool Nrsingadev temples that I went to, um, and some other places in India. So, anyways, I just want to say thank you because
Been
this also
fantastic. It's
very
been
much
really good.
inspired me.
You're a perfect podcast kind of guest because I could just listen to you. I could listen to you for all night. I think we could just go on. Well,
I got lots of fun stories.
one of my not dreams. What's that? I'm definitely going to come over to New York, and one of the reasons to come over to New York is to come and see you and to say hello to you and shake your hand and go, look, hello, and buy you a coffee.
Yeah, so
Um,
anytime, can you hear me?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just had to turn my headphones were starting to die. So anytime you or anybody you know wants to come to New York, hit me up for sure. But wait, I want to just I saw something the other day. I may have there is a European author who wrote one of my all-time favorite books, and then a few other related books. He wrote one or two books on the history of straight edge, and I forget where he's from. Kuhn, Kuhn.
Thomas Kuhn. Yeah,
Yeah. So he one of my all-time favorite books he wrote, and it's the history. It's called "Play as if the World Mattered,"
right. Okay. Yeah,
and it's the history. It's the history of the workers' sports movement in the I believe it's the late 18th or sorry, late 19th and early 20th century. Um, Absolutely, hands down, the most authoritative, one of the most authoritative books on the topic,
okay.
which is a really important topic. And I talked to him once or twice over the years, but I think he's like a hardcore kid, and
Yeah.
also I think he's not allowed to come visit the United States. It's
For obvious
hilarious.
reasons. Yeah.
But anyway, so I saw something either one of your I read some of your stuff online, but I think either you referenced him or there was something I
Yeah, I
saw
did. I've got his
something.
books down there. That's why I'm looking down there. So, oh yeah, yeah,
Okay,
I've
so
got them.
he is one of my all-time hands down favorite books is called Play as if the World Matters because it's the history of the workers' sports movement, and that's really important. It's also very important for the history of the United States. And at some point, I'm going to write about that. As soon as I'm done with nursing school, I'll publish my book, which is the history of fitness culture, and a big part of it is German fitness culture that came to the United States and played an important, a very significant role in supporting Abraham Lincoln and supporting abolitionism, ending slavery. And they built up the Midwest and were very important, but not hardly anyone knows about them. So as soon as I'm done with school, I'll publish my book. But this guy, Thomas Kuhn, is brilliant, man. His that the work he has another book on the history of Austrian fitness culture, and it's
Does he?
somewhat related to straight edge culture. So I don't care about the history of straight edge that much, but as it's related to fitness culture, which is a political history, his books are brilliant, absolutely wonderful. And I got a paper that you wrote. I only started to read it,
Mm,
but I downloaded a paper and I'll
mm.
read it for sure. I had an exam last week, so like it's hard for me to read or do anything. And usually when I start watching a film or documentary, I fall asleep and I pass out in 15, 20 minutes
Yeah.
because like school's hard, man. School takes up like all my brain energy and then I'm like
Mm.
exhausted. But anyway, so I just want to say thanks. And yeah, anytime you or anyone you know wants to come to New York City, a lot of history. There's some crazy, awesome temple in the Lower East Side. It's some
Okay.
they're crazy like whatever the wood like carvings and the like not just the deities, but like all these wood. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like you're in another. It's beautiful. That's on Avenue B. I'm assuming it's still there. That was another shady ass guru who did some fucked up stuff. But the temple itself is beautiful. And there's other cool things, historic things to do in New York City. Anyways, yeah. Thanks a lot, dude.
Thank
It
you.
was great
I'll see you
talking.
later on, and you take care. Bye.
All right. So, all right. Thanks a lot, dude. We'll talk soon.